Thank you for joining me today on another episode of the Happy Whole You podcast. And this is part 3 of Stop Bullying Yourself. Those of you on YouTube, you can see the book right here. This is the book I wrote 8 years ago, and I'm just going through almost chapter by chapter, and I'm sharing some insights with you regarding what is in this book. And we are on chapter 3. Chapter 3 is about reflecting, and it's called Reflect, and it's learn from your past to own your future. And I wanted to talk about this concept. So for a very long time in my life, I was a victim of my past. I would blame everything on my parents. I would blame everything on what happened to me in my past. And what I've learned is that our past is there to support us, our past is there to shape us, and our past is there to give us lessons as we move into our future to better help prepare us for what it is we are supposed to be doing. Now, I know you may be saying, well, Anna Marie, you don't know what happened to me in my past. And I'm here to say I don't. And I'm also here to say that we all have a past, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't know a single person who hasn't gone through life and had some type of traumatic experience happen to them or to somebody else that made it be traumatic for them as well. And again, it's not a competition of who has more trauma or drama, but it's how we choose to evolve through it, past it, moving forward. And for me, I'm going to share with you some things that really helped me kind of own my past, own where I was at, take responsibility for my life. Because when you are in the victim mode, victim mentality, it's really easy to blame your boss, blame your finances, blame your spouse, blame your parents, blame your upbringing, blame the person that hit your car and didn't have insurance, blame the electric company for increasing their prices by 20%. Blame the government. You guys know what I'm talking about. You and I both know we could blame a lot of things for why things aren't going well in our life. But it's choosing to not dwell on those things and choosing to take personal responsibility. And when we take personal responsibility, this gives us our power back. This gives us energy. When we have a choice, and we always have a choice, we can begin to show up in life with new appreciation for life, with more energy, with more clarity on where we're supposed to go. And a lot of times people act as if they don't have a choice. They stay in that victim mentality mode. And so one exercise that I have done that has been really helpful, and I encourage you to do the same, is I call it the value gain exercise, or extracting the values exercise. And so this is where we get to choose to go through certain periods of our life and extract the value gained from those experiences that were traumatic for us at the time. Because I don't know who it was, but I remember listening to, I think it was a monk or somebody saying something along the lines of, isn't it interesting how literally 99% of our life is okay, it's good, like nothing bad is happening to us. And yet the 1% of the extreme, dramatic, horrible experiences that happen in our life, we allow that 1% to shape the other 99%. And I found that to be very interesting because we do that. We have a bad relationship and maybe somebody cheated on us and we say, oh, you can't trust men. You can't trust them. You can't do it. Of course they're going to cheat. They're going to cheat. And that was one guy. And so then you show up in life and you say they're going to cheat. And I believe we put out that vibrational frequency. And then what are we doing? We're attracting cheaters. Whereas if we go back to that relationship and we really look at what truly happened and take the emotions out of it, it's like, okay, this guy was not calling you back. You caught him in different lies. He wasn't being honest, and he cheated on you. Okay. Versus what we tend to do is we make up excuses for others. And this is just for a relationship, for example. We make up excuses for, oh, they're just busy, or oh, he didn't mean to do that, or oh, blah, 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 blah. And it's interesting how we do those things when really we should just say, what is the lesson here? What is the value gained from going through that relationship with that person who was not trustworthy, for that person who hurt me, for that person, that made me feel insignificant? And I think the value that we can gain from those situations is that I deserve more, that I can choose to have somebody who is honest, that I can choose to have somebody who is trustworthy, who treats me well, and realize that when people aren't honest and are not telling you the truth and are not doing what they say they're going to do, and or on the other hand, they say a lot of things, but then their actions speak different than their words. The value gained from that is you can probably spot uh, somebody who doesn't deserve to be in your orbit, that doesn't deserve to be in your life. And the value gained is that you have awareness around, what you don't want to what you do want. And so I encourage everyone to go through their life, take your life in 5-year increments and extract the value gained from different situations. Um, so I'll give you a recent example for me because I've talked about this in the past. I think I actually did a podcast specifically on these value gains. Because I have a worksheet that I do with clients around this, and I think I did a podcast. You can go back and look through, but a podcast where I walk you through specifically how to do the worksheet, and I share some different stories in that podcast. So for those that heard that podcast, I'll share a different story today. This story was such a great lesson. This was such a good lesson for me. But it's interesting because sometimes when you're in those opportunities to be learning, we're in there kicking and screaming, not looking at the lesson and just looking at it and saying, poor me, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Anyways, I left a career 2 years ago and I was with a company it was actually a school district for 18 years. The last almost 8 years, I transitioned and I was in a position that I thought was my dream job. And honestly, at the time, it was my dream job. I was like, if I get this job, this is it. I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire here. I'm going to spend another 20 years doing this very same thing. And what was interesting is I was just so happy and so glad I got this job, so grateful. And I put all my energy. I loved doing what I was doing and I was really good at what I was doing. And after a few years in this position, I realized that there was somebody there that I allowed to treat me in a way, and I didn't set up boundaries and treat me in a way as if I was insignificant. I didn't speak up for myself as I should have, and this continued on. And towards the end, before I left, I got really upset and really angry, and just was couldn't believe that I felt like I was disregarded. When really, if I really look at the value gained from the whole thing without getting into all the details, which could be another podcast episode, um, the value gained was that when other people don't see your worth and your value, you get to choose to leave because just because they don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that was so valuable for me to really see, and it was hard for me to see. I mean, literally, I was about to walk away from a six-figure salary with health insurance, with, retirement. You check all the boxes. I mean, I spent 18 years there, right? To walk away from something for 18 years, It was really challenging. Like I knew 2 years prior that I needed to leave, but I kept dragging my feet, and I was actually getting sick. I was having some health issues, and this was literally my body trying to tell me, like, get the heck out of here. You have other things to do. And so the value of it was there was twofold value actually. Was one, don't stay in places where people don't value you or see your worth to the full extent of who you are and what you're capable of and what you can do. That was a really big value. And the second one is that you get to recreate your life and do whatever you want at any age. So it can be really scary at 40 years old walking away from that security. I had tenured. I mean, it was, like to walk away from all that. But you get to choose it. You get to walk away, and it's okay to walk away from that. The other value that, well, I guess I don't know, it's value, but something that I experienced is I remember I was literally so like nervous to leave because I thought, man, how am I going to replace a six-figure income when, I mean, I know I was doing, I had my business that I had started on the side, and I was like, okay, I could do this, but it might take me a while. And then once I decided that like there was no other option, I was leaving. I wasn't going to choose anything different. I was going for it 100%. There was going to be no looking back. Like I gave myself no more excuses because it's kind of interesting how we give ourselves the excuses. Well, I can only do this when, or I can only do that if this person does this. And we go through and we make up excuses of why we are or not going to do something. But I decided, you know what? I, one question I asked myself, I was like, okay, if you're 80 years old, are you going to regret leaving this position or are you going to regret not leaving it? And we all know the answer to that. I was going to regret if I didn't take a chance and invest in myself and go 110% into my company, happy, whole you. So at 40 years old, I left my 18-year career. I purchased a building. Actually, this was another thing, is during the same time that I was like trying to get an exit strategy, the lease that I had where my company was operating out of our wellness center, and this was like 750 square feet, the building had been sold and they were not going to renew our lease. So not only was I leaving my career, I also wasn't going to, I had to find a new place to have my business. And I've invested in real estate since I was in my 20s. And so I was like, you know what? You're going to go big or you're going to go home. And it was during COVID too. And prices were going up. And so I was like, I'm going to do it. I bought myself a building, 2,500 square feet, moved the business into the building, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make that happen. And again, I was worried about how in the world am I going to replace this income? And now I just bought this big commercial building. And I just had to like trust in myself and believe in myself. And what I started to do is I started to show up the way I know how to show up 1,000%, 100% me, authentic me, wanting to help people, wanting to do the very things that I know I'm capable of. And I started to show up in my own authentic way. And in over 2 years, I have made my income well over that $100,000, more than tenfold that $100,000. And literally that lesson from that time where literally I felt like I was so crippled, I couldn't even make the decision to give my 2 weeks notice. I couldn't even make the decision to like it was like I would play with the idea of leaving, and then I would like get so paralyzed with fear that I'm like, I can't make this decision. I can't make that decision. But once I made that decision, it was like, oh my gosh, I literally freed myself. So we get to reinvent ourselves at any age. Never stay in a room or around people that don't see your value, that don't see what you're capable of, or even if they can't see it. It's up to us to also, we can enroll people. And even then, there's people that just aren't going to be ready for the fullness of who you are. But it's so important that we step into those things and look at the value gain. Um, so so that's another example of extracting the value gain. And in previous episode, I told you about the story in second grade when my teacher told me I'd never amount to anything because I couldn't read well. So I lived my life thinking I wasn't smart enough, I was stupid. But really, the value gained of that is any person I meet at any time, I would never judge them based on their education level. I love seeing the brightness in all people. I'm so like, these value gains that we get out of these challenging times are so important. But a lot of times we look at the challenging times and we get stuck on why that happened to us. How could you let this happen to me, God, or whatnot? When really there's a value gain from that. Maybe you're a more compassionate person. Maybe you're more understanding. Maybe you dedicated your life to a purpose greater than yourself because of that one thing. I mean, there's so much value that we get from going through challenging times. And this is why it's important for us to reflect in our life. We need to reflect and we need to say, okay, yes, I went through that and I am greater because of that. And really take the goodness from our past experiences, our past struggles, all of the things that we've been through, and reflect on them and get in gratitude for the life that you have. Because our life couldn't have happened any other way than how it's happened this far. And our life is on purpose. So in chapter 3 of the book, we talk about reflecting, and I really think we all need to do that. We need to reflect, own your past, to own your future. Like that's so important because sometimes people, what I find is, and by the way, this is me too, I've done this as well, is we will let the very things from our past that we say we didn't like, that we don't like, we wish it never happened to us, we will still allow that to show up in our present moment and shape our future. So we need to quit allowing the things in our past that we say that we never wanted, that we hate, that whatever, we need to quit letting them shape our future self. And the way we do that is we leave the emotion from that event in the past and we extract the value gain or the lesson from that happening for us. And we take that lesson into our future and we leave that emotion in the past. I get it. It's easier said than done. But when we get in that framework and we get in that mindset to do that, and again, that worksheet can be really helpful for us to do that as well. This really helps us gain an appreciation for what we've been through in our life. I can't tell you how many clients that I've had sit across from me, tell me some really crazy stories of things that have happened in their life. And then I invite them to do the exercise of what if we took the value gained from that experience? And they kind of look at me cross-eyed, like, what are you talking about? And then once we look at the value gained, it feels different inside for them. They don't feel as heavy, they don't feel as dense because they feel like they gain something from that experience versus that experience taking so much from them. Again, this takes time, this takes work, but I invite all of us to keep doing the work and keep showing up to be our true, authentic selves. And you guys, I hope you enjoyed chapter 3, and we're going to get in chapter 4 coming up really soon. So I will see you later.